Recently, I went through what anyone would call a living nightmare. And no, I'm not exaggerating. You ever have a day where you're just fixing your car in the garage, and suddenly your HOA president calls 911 screaming you're stockpiling weapons? That was me, not even an hour ago, watching red and blue lights slash through the oak trees out front while my heart tried to crawl up my throat and escape. The second I hit my garage door opener, I swear, it was like I'd landed in a movie. Guns in my face, officers yelling, and somewhere in the chaos of voice screeching, "Oh my God, that's the governor." But hey, let me rewind a sec, because if you don't know how it started, you'll never believe how it ends. It was one of those crisp October Fridays, the kind that makes you grateful for a warm drink and a half-dead classic Mustang to tinker with. I just pulled into my driveway at the cabin, 2 acres, just far enough outside the HOA jurisdiction to fool me into thinking life would be simple. The lake was silver in the sunset. I had tools in one hand and keys in the other, and I swear the only thing on my mind was the carburetor that had been whining all week. My name's Michael Thompson, 34, cybersecurity engineer, professional at reading fine print and keeping every receipt since the IRS once tried to eat me alive. Bought this place 3 years back because it looked peaceful and was supposed to be beyond the HOA's claws. Spoiler, it wasn't. That night, as I was popping the trunk, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, but the voice was family. "Michael, it's Uncle Richard. I need to lay low at your place tonight. Don't ask questions." You don't say no to Uncle Richard. He's always been the mysterious suit and govplates relative, but when family's in a bind, you show up. "You got a side room and a cot," I told him. "How soon?" 20 minutes. He sounded tense, which wasn't like him at all. I said yes. That's when Karen Whitfield, president of our illustrious HOA, made her entrance, marching across the line like she was leading an army. 52, ran the HOA like it was her kingdom, perfume strong enough to knock you out, smile sharper than broken glass. She carried a folder thick with papers, always did, and tonight she was coming in hot about my unauthorized roof repairs. I try to keep it cool. "Karen, I submitted those papers weeks ago. I got receipts and the committee's letter right here." She argued. I countered. She got red. I stayed calm, until I mentioned I'd volunteered to help with the HOA's annual audit, given my background. And then, for the first time, Karen actually looked scared. She said, "That won't be necessary, Michael." And the way her voice quivered, you'd have thought I'd threatened to hack her bank account. She started dialing her phone, muttering about serious consequences for residents who challenged the board. I felt my own temper spark. "I'm just following the rules, Karen." She ignored me, kept whispering into her phone, her eyes flicking from me to the garage. I know cyber attacks when I see them coming, and I knew she was about to go nuclear. And man, did she. When I pressed my garage opener, ready to grab those documents, she hung up and spun around with this look of absolute satisfaction. "Michael, I've contacted the Department of Homeland Security," she said, waving an official-looking printout in my face. "Your activities have raised red flags." Now, my day job makes me allergic to fake documents, and everything about this was wrong. The font, the formatting, the IP address in the header. I snapped a few pics. "Karen, this came from your home router." She started sweating. I pointed out the metadata. She accused me of being anti-authority, and the next thing I knew, she was calling 911, full volume, telling them I was armed, dangerous, and hiding a hostage in my garage. You know those moments where you're not sure if you're awake or dreaming. Sirens started wailing down the road, lights flashed through the trees, and I realized I had maybe 3 minutes to save my uncle from whatever hell Karen was unleashing. I begged her to stop. She just smirked, confident that she was about to win whatever twisted game she was playing. And then it got worse. 4 patrol cars barreled down my driveway, officers out with weapons drawn, shouting at me to step away from the garage. I kept my hands up, tried to explain, told them about the security cameras, the fake email, but Karen was right there feeding them lies. "He's got a hostage in there," she yelled, and the officers stiffened, all eyes on me. I explained the only person in the garage was a family member needing a safe place, but the fear had already spread. The sergeant told me, "You open that door slowly, or we will use lethal force." So I did. The door creaked up, and there was Uncle Richard, my uncle, the governor, stepping into the floodlights, hands raised, saying, "Officers, I'm here of my own will. My nephew's not a threat. For a second, time froze. And then, one young officer, caught up in Karen's story, fired. Uncle Richard fell, blood spreading on his white shirt, and all I could hear was, "Oh my God, I just shot the governor." Karen's face crumpled, her victory turning to horror as she realized what she'd set in motion. The next hours were chaos. Paramedics whisked my uncle to the hospital. Karen vanished into a police cruiser. FBI agents arrived, and I spent the night replaying every second on security footage, showing Agent Hayes, an FBI investigator with eyes sharp as razors, how Karen had forged the email, orchestrated the setup, and called in a hit using the police as her weapon. The twist? My audit had uncovered $180,000 stolen from HOA funds, siphoned through fake contractors and shell companies, all leading back to Karen. She wasn't just petty, she was criminal, and she'd tried to cover her tracks with blood. A week later, Agent Hayes' field office was flooded with evidence. But the real breakthrough came when Jennifer Walsh, ex-HOA secretary, showed up trembling with a digital recorder. She'd been documenting Karen's threats for months. Recordings of board meetings where Karen plotted to frame me. Recordings of her rehearsing the 911 call that nearly got both me and my uncle killed. She even admitted on tape that, if we're lucky, law enforcement will eliminate the problem permanently. Turns out, Karen had blackmailed and intimidated at least 3 other residents, and the financial fraud ran through 6 states, a criminal network hiding in plain sight. Agent Hayes dubbed it Operation Clean Sweep, and suddenly my cabin became command central for the largest HOA fraud case in the country. The evidence was ironclad: embezzlement, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit murder by law enforcement proxy, all documented and digital. They arrested Karen and her crew, and I, me, the guy who just wanted a quiet garage, became interim HOA president. We reformed everything, hired an outside auditor, made every transaction public, pushed for state legislation, the Thompson Community Protection Act, named for my uncle and our neighborhood. What started as a nightmare in my driveway had blown open a national scandal, changed laws, and brought real oversight to communities that had been ruled by people like Karen for decades. And let me tell you, seeing her sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, followed by millions in restitution, was about as satisfying as it gets. You know what I mean? There were tears in that courtroom. Not for Karen, but for the families she'd bankrupted, the lives she'd upended, the trust she'd destroyed. My life changed forever. I teamed up with Jennifer to start a nonprofit, training communities, helping people spot fraud, setting up protections so nobody else would be silenced by threats. My uncle recovered, and the sunset over our lake finally felt peaceful again. But the story never really ends. Even with Karen gone, there's always another HOA out there. Another quiet tyrant with a clipboard and a taste for control. The garage where my uncle nearly died is now the community's meeting place, transparent, open, and full of hope. So, let me ask you, what would you do if your neighbor tried to have you killed by the police? Have you seen corruption hiding behind friendly faces, or watched someone abuse a little power and destroy a lot of lives? If you have an HOA horror story, drop it below. Because what happened to me could happen to anyone. And the only thing more powerful than corruption is a community that fights back. Share your story, start a conversation, and maybe together we can make sure the next Karen never gets as far as mine did.